From one film geek to another, I want to thank you for making original films. And I feel like Hollywood is kind of creatively bankrupt these days, and it's really refreshing to see original films. And I wanted to know how you think you can keep making original films where the Star Wars directors are fired. And Ansel, how do you choose the films that you do and choose original films and interesting directors?
There's a lot to unpack there.
There's been this fascination from film geeks that original movies are the only movies that can be good, that only certain filmmakers or certain types of movies can be considered works of art in a world run by franchises.
There's nothing wrong with like franchise movies. I just think there should be original movies alongside them. And like people sort of forget that back in 1977, Star Wars was an original screenplay. Alien was an original screenplay in 1979. Terminator was an original screenplay in 1984. So you can make, you can make original, like, popcorn movies. It shouldn't be a line in the sand where it's like franchise movies and then everything else is avant-garde, like awardsy stuff. You can make entertaining movies that are like original. Like Get Out is a great example of that. Get Out is like a film that like cost $4 million and made more money than King Kong, and that should be applauded,
To put it best, good movies aren't bound by genres. I feel like we tend to see the Oscar-release movies as the ones that can be called masterpieces, that certain genre films like horrors or comedies can't reach that level, but they can, and they have. A genre just means that it shares similar narrative elements or emotional responses such as laughter or fear, which doesn't mean they have to be lowbrow movies, the same way that not all dramas are award winners. It's all about the story. And that's where Edgar Wright comes in.
So I think it's also about the audience. The audience has got to support those movies, and that's the thing. But I don't think original cinema is dead.
There are fantastic videos covering this man's visual style, his use of transitions, and even how he's influenced a new generation of filmmakers. So what I want to cover is how he plays with genres, subverts cliches, and beyond being original, how he makes stories that we've seen before just a lot more interesting. See, I've always seen him as someone who's perfect at timing, not only with the pacing of his films, but with the release of his films, and sometimes even being ahead of the times.
And whatever the cost, we would make Sanford great again.
He's the master at flipping genres that are trending on its head, with his version of a zombie movie, his version of a buddy cop film, his version of an alien invasion film, a true comic book adaptation, and most recently, his take on a getaway heist movie in a time when the Fast and the Furious franchise has become as huge as it is. And it's not that he's just parodying movies or making fun of the genre like other spoof movies do, but instead, he's using the genre to tell his own story.
Yeah, and that kind of then blossomed into something which then became like the idea of like, oh, maybe it's a romantic comedy which just happens to have zombies in it. In Hot Fuzz, the central idea was like contrast the British police with like American movies. But then in this one, I think actually the story and the genre went hand in hand, because the sci-fi invasion aspect of it is an amplification of a feeling. It's like when you go back home, you feel alienated, pun intended, from your hometown, and so it was a natural extension of that. So I think with this one actually was, The World's End was always going to be the last bar, and it was about like a pub crawl, which literally, all pub crawls are like exercise in self-destruction, and so it was the idea of like, do a film that's sort of about Armageddon, but really it's about one man's self-destruction.
With Scott Pilgrim, he exemplified what it's like to face the baggage that comes with a significant other, as well as earning your own self-respect.
Scott earned the power of self-respect.
And with Baby Driver, he pushes the idea of moving beyond grief and leaving behind your past. The beauty of his movies is that those themes are what connects them. When you look at the Cornetto trilogy, which started off as a joke and then blossomed to something that was more symbolic, you see that the focus is more on the characters and the plot, that there's no need for a sequel if there's no more room for the character to grow.
It's a similar thing with Shaun of the Dead, but even more so with this, is like, people sort of say, oh, would you do a Hot Fuzz 2? And I sort of say, well, it would be difficult to, because the thing is, when you do a film where somebody goes on a journey, once they've reached the end of that journey, and in the last scene of the film, Nicholas Angel, but kind of the joke in the last scene is Nicholas Angel is like a fascist super cop. He's become that right-wing Avenger from all of those 80 films. He's got the black bomber jacket, he's wearing the shades, he's wearing the killer's gloves. He's got like the black gloves on. And the thing is that sort of like, how do you start Hot Fuzz 2 from there? It's kind of that thing. That's why I thought the Matrix sequels didn't work, is because where do you go at the end of the first film when your character has become a god? It's like, you know, kind of, and the only way you can go is to throw in some doubt again. It's like, well, maybe he's not a god.
Yeah, exactly.
Then by the end of film 3, it's like, oh, okay, he is.
It's that approach that I think distinguishes Wright as a director. His completeness, his attention to detail, and how he leaves little clues throughout for a definitive end that separates him from others who follow certain tropes in hopes of a sequel, in hopes of pleasing mass audiences by keeping things so standard that they'll be able to bank off of the film. But Wright strives to find a balance.
I think you just have to get the studio on board in terms of like, is it something A, that's commercial, but B, original enough that people will be excited about something new? Getting a great cast on board, you know, making sure that it like doesn't cost so much that it's a huge risk. Those are all the factors of just getting something original made, you know?
While Scott Pilgrim may be my favorite of his filmography, I truly believe his masterpiece is the film Hot Fuzz. And to me, it has one of the deepest themes when you look at the relationship between the main characters and how they evolve. How one super cop has to diminish part of himself to join forces with someone who's, let's say, lesser than him in order to become something greater. It shows a balance that results in success by giving up something, and something that I believe is reflected in Wright's career. See, we expect certain things from certain movies. We become accustomed to it, these conventions and the tropes from the movies that we watch, and we box in filmmakers to knock out certain things in a checklist that we have set for them. But the thing is, directors shouldn't be defined by a genre. The genre should be defined by them.